Let's visit the 90s all over again. Put on those hammer pants. This is Dope Nostalgia.
Hello, my friends. This is episode 157 of Dope Nostalgia Podcast, and I'm your host, Naomi. I hope you had a chance this weekend on Sunday to listen to our third birthday live on YouTube. That episode will be coming out next week. We had a blast, as always, but it was our very first time we did it live. So thank you if you were a part of it for checking it out. If you didn't, that's okay. You can always listen to it later. Like I said, next week. This week's guest is very special to me. She's an influence on me as a young rock singer, and I got to see her perform live back in '92, opening for Bryan Adams on his Waking Up the Neighbors tour. Well, that's where I fell in love with the music and voice of Chrissy Steele. So we've got Chrissy on the show today for her very first interview in a long, long time. We're talking 20 plus years. So Chrissy, I had such a great time talking to you. I felt like we really, really had a great conversation. And now we get to share it with our listeners. Here's a little bit of information on Chrissy Steele.
Wikipedia moment.
Chrissy Steele is a two-time Juno nominee from Victoria, BC, Canada. Not a terrible loss considering she was up against Alanis Morissette and Rush. Now, I'm reading this straight from her bio at ChrissySteele.com. So this isn't just a Wikipedia moment. This is her official bio. Her debut album, Magnet to Steel, was released by Chrysalis EMI Records in the 90s. The label pushed the project hard, putting over $2 million US in today's money into promoting the Brian McLeod produced gem. With McLeod of Headpins and Chilliwack fame at the helm, the album was recorded at his small studio on his boat, the infamous Grand Marnier in Vancouver's Granville Island. With years on the road, fighting it out in clubs, Steele was poised and ready. But the story goes, McLeod had to bow out of the project due to stage 4 terminal cancer. While Chrysalis Records has its own drama with selling its 50% share of the company, right when Steele was releasing her second single, Love Don't Last Forever, penned by Canadian Tim Feehan and Brian McLeod, with Mark Slaughter lending a hand on backups. Despite this, with her manager Sam Feldman and McLeod's assistance, a new band was developed, and Steele grabbed the opening slots during Bryan Adams' huge 1992 Waking Up the Neighbors and 1991 Jethro Tull's Catfish Rising tours. McLeod tragically succumbed to cancer 6 months later. This was a glorious yet incredibly jarring end to a decade of rock stars with all the glam and lushness of the 80s, producing such bands as Loverboy, Motley Crue, and Pat Benatar. Many artists entering the 90s with bright careers such as Steele had to admit defeat as the grunge anti-stars such as Nirvana and Soundgarden unceremoniously took over the radio waves. Fast forward 30 years later, it so happened that Steele and Glenn Willows, the guitarist and main writer for the iconic band Harlequin, met. A musical partnership developed along with Steele's brother and songwriter Brian Southern. Several songs were recorded, including the dark modern single Insidious and the ballad Unrequited, Remember Me. The first song, Insidious, released in October 2021 during the COVID pandemic, quite rightly talks about life's challenges and difficulty fitting into a broken society. It's a different sound and feel than from the Magnet to Steel days, but it fits well with Steele's glass half-filled scope on life. Luckily, Steele's fans have been there through the thick and thin. With her popularity expanding on social media, Steele has managed to hold her own. Along with Glenn Willows, these two Canadian icons seem to be leveraging their hard-earned place in rock history. Unrequited Remember Me, penned by Willows, Southern, and Steele, is out on all streaming platforms tomorrow, January 20th, 2023. So that's why it's a pleasure to do this episode for you today and welcome one of my musical heroes, Chrissy Steele. Welcome to Dope Nostalgia. I'm very grateful that you took the time to do this with me today.
Oh, well, it's really wonderful to be here, and thanks for having me. This
Mm.
year I started listening to your podcasts on my daily walks, and they're pretty interesting. And I have about 160 more episodes to go, though. So I better get walking.
Oh man, I'm glad you're into it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I gotta say, there's been some really interesting interviews, such as, did you hear the one with Alana Miles?
No, I would love to see that, though. She's like one of my
Yeah.
idols.
Right? So like that one, I was shocked that I even got because I was
You
only
got
at
Alana
episode,
Miles?
because I thought she was kind of just like under the radar, trying to, kind of be reclusive now. I didn't know like what the deal was with her, but I managed to get through her management to her and she did it.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
well, what episode number is that? Because I want to listen to that.
That was number 50. So that was way
Mm,
back
You're gonna
when,
have to go way back on that one.
way back when it was
Wow.
first starting out.
Oh, Alana Miles, I remember when she first came out, she just blew the doors off. She
Yeah.
was just incredible. And when I'm practicing, I practice with karaoke because it's just,
Mm.
it's easy and I can do it in my own living room and I can blast the speakers and I wear in-ears, so I can hear myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't wake up the total neighborhood. Um, but I always sing Black Velvet, and that's one of my favorite songs that she did. And, I used to play her album over and over and over and over again, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's
Oh,
probably
those are
your
good.
era, was it too?
It
Around
was. It
late
was.
80s, or, well, she came up with another album in the early 90s that unfortunately didn't do very well,
Was that
but
Mockingbird? Is that what
it
it
was the
was
one
called?
with her on the black horse.
Rocking Horse. That's what it was
That
called.
rocking horse? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're right.
So, but fantastic singer for sure.
Hey, if you ever need any karaoke tracks that you don't have, I'm a karaoke host here at
Are
Edmonton,
you?
so
No way.
I'll hook you up if you need some songs.
Oh wow. I just go on YouTube and play them on YouTube.
That's a good resource to have.
You can
It
pretty much
works.
find anything on YouTube these days, so it's pretty cool. Yeah.
And it is good practice. I love it.
Yeah. Some of the karaoke tracks sound pretty bad though. That little
Mhm.
rinky dinky keyboard in the background or something.
The MIDI versions.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guitar solo sound like, oh, like a
Oh,
like a flute or something.
yeah, it's like yeah, it's hilarious. But it's
Oh,
fun. It's
it
fun to
is fun.
sing for sure.
This So thank
Yeah.
you, Chrissy, for giving me that opportunity to talk to you about what's going on with your music. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
Starting with the current music experiences that you're having now as an indie artist, because you've released new music and it's awesome. It's so great. You had Insidious come out
Mm.
last year,
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
and now you have the new singles coming out, right? So can you tell?
Yeah. Well, you know, the decision to get back into music was it's kind of a long story, but I just kept on seeing whenever I Googled my name, I would kept on seeing this extremely tragic, sad story all the time. And I didn't want it to end that way, because I knew I had some more music in me, and it was just the matter of meeting the right people to write with me or write for me or whatever. And um, I was just kind of putting the tentacles out there to see who was willing to work with me. And a friend said that Glenn Willows lives in Victoria. And I said, "Well, who's Glenn Willows?" I didn't really know who he was at first. Oh, he was
Mhm.
like the guy who wrote all those Harlequin songs. He was the guitarist in Harlequin. And I'm like,
Uh,
"What?" Like they were huge in my day, right? And
yeah,
I remember driving around in Vancouver and listening to all those hits, like um, I Did It for Love and Innocence. And
yeah.
so I was like, I got on Facebook and I found his Facebook page and I messaged him. I didn't hear back for months. I just kind of let it go. Oh well, that's another and lost cause. So he finally did return, and we returned my message, and we got together and we had a nice talk, and we talked about music, and he said, I've got a bunch of songs I'd love you to sing on. And I said, hey, yeah, like let's get together and listen to some stuff. So he sent me some stuff, and one thing kind of led to another, and my brother got involved. My brother is a writer. He's been honing his craft for many, many years, and he's just like a world-class lyricist, my brother. I don't know
Wow.
where it comes from. I don't know how he does it, but he's just got that mercurial kind of mind. He's able to come up with lyrics just in no time. So him and Glenn ended up really hitting it off, because Glenn, um, he writes lyrics. He wrote "I Did It for Love," but he prefers to write the music and have somebody else write the lyrics. And I think that's kind of the relationship he had with George, the singer for Harlequin, is George would write the melody and the lyrics, and Glenn would write the melody. So anyways, they got together and they wrote Insidious. And so I was just like, Brian put his vocal on it, and then I put my vocal on it later. And I just said, well, we've got to release this. This is just too good of a song. And it also, I can really relate to the existential kind of torment that the song relays, going through a difficult time, and, sort of trauma that's happened in your life. And when you kind of hit the wall, and you sort of ask God for direction in a way, right?
Yeah.
I think we've all been there, where we've hit the wall and we're just like, we don't know which way to turn or who to ask for help, and you're just kind of lost.
Mm.
And that song really relays a lot of moments that I've had in my life, you know. So anyways, yeah, so that was done about a year ago, and we were really lucky. We found a guy, James Reinhard, who mixed the song for us here in Victoria. And so we've got a nice little team, James Reinhard and Glenn and Brian and me. And,
Yeah.
so it's really worked out quite well.
I've
Yeah.
heard that happen for people where when it was time for them to feel musically creative and come back out into the industry again, it was because it wasn't because they were personally this making that time. It was because they found the right song.
Hmm.
Do
Yeah.
you feel that way about
Yeah.
Insidious?
I do remember back in when after Magnet to Steel was released, my first album that came out in 1991. After all that kind of went through its thing and everything, and we can talk about Brian later, but uh, there's some people were sending me songs, and they were just so not me. I
Hmm.
really wanted to move into something that was a little bit more deeper and meaningful in the lyrics.
Yeah.
And it was just all very kind of superficial, party kind of songs and everything that just wasn't me anymore.
Hmm.
So I think I just kind of gave up and just said, you know what, like I'm going to go do something else for a while. You know, Maybe this will come back, but for now, I need to try something else.
Did you feel pressure to change your sound in any ways because of what was going on in the music industry at the time, like grunge becoming a big thing and, you know,
Well, if
just
you
the
listen to
changes?
anybody that was big in the 90s or sorry, the 80s, you go on YouTube, and almost everyone says that once grunge came around, everything fell apart for them,
Yeah.
because it was just record companies were not signing the so-called hair bands anymore, the bands of the 80s or even the early 80s, they just weren't into that anymore, and they were all just signing grunge acts. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, how many grunge acts could possibly be out there, But apparently there were a lot, and I think the music industry had to change because it was getting a little bit ridiculous. The
Hmm.
80s, um, there's only so much 80s we could handle, you know. So
It's
it was
true.
just getting really fluffy, and Poison came out, and that was like, oh my, I mean, really fun stuff and everything, but um, I think it needed to change, and it's too bad it had to be grunge, but a lot of people lost their careers in the
Yeah.
early 90s. Lots of people. I mean, I can imagine Slick Toxic was affected by it, and just Soraya, which was a big female act in the States, they got affected by it.
Mm.
Just tons of bands. Like if you ask anybody that was around then, they would probably tell you the same story, you know.
Oh yeah, we've definitely had those chats on the show with people about how things changed for them musically and
Mhm,
how they weren't able to do the same things they could do 5, 10 years prior.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I had a really fun time, you know, just touring with Bryan Adams. I mean, you know,
And
my God, I did the whole tour with him, and
I saw you live. I did.
I can't believe you saw me. Wow.
It was in January 92.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
you were playing
Absolutely.
at Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton.
In Edmonton, the good old Edmonton.
Yes. And so
I
I'd
played
already
there a
heard
few times, definitely played in Edmonton.
I'd heard you on Much Music already. So I'd seen what you were all about. And I'm like, this is right up my alley. I'm going to love her.
Oh, wow.
And
Well, I'm
of
so
course I
happy you
did.
saw me.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people did see me, and you know, as being the opening act for such a big act like Brian Adams, it's a little, you know, it's a little crazy. You know, you
Hmm.
got people that are really there to see Brian Adams. So I'm always impressed when people remember me, you know,
Hmm.
because it's like any opening act. When you're opening up for somebody huge, people are just kind of coming in slowly and sitting down there. Oh, it's just the opening act. We'll just, you know, talk over them or something like that. So the fact that you remember me, that's amazing.
I definitely do. And I can't remember if I purchased your cassette before the show or after the show, but I did own it.
Oh, well,
So
thanks. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool.
I have some good memories of that tour. Just being able to open up at the Maple Leaf Gardens, you know, playing
Mm,
Maple Leaf Gardens, this iconic place.
I
You know,
bet.
places like that. And um, when I was playing in Sault Ste. Marie with Bryan Adams, after the show, oh, I actually have a really funny story. Um,
Nice.
oh, this is a funny one. So I don't know if you've ever been backstage at some of these big coliseums, but it's like a hockey rink, really. It's a
Yeah.
hockey rink. And so my band had their room. It's a massive hockey rink dressing room meant for a whole team. So you're in this big, huge dressing room, and I have my own dressing room because I was the only girl.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, I'm just getting out of the shower and getting ready to go on stage or something like that. And I hear this knock on the door, and I go, "Oh my God!" I was like, I didn't have anything on, and I hear this knock. I hear this knock on the door. I go, "Don't come in!" Whoever was on the other side, I think, just heard "come in."
Oh no.
So in walks Bryan Adams, and I'm standing there, and I grab my suitcase, and I'm holding it up to me, and he doesn't even flinch. He didn't even flinch, and so I'm standing there going, hello?" And I hadn't even met him yet on the tour, I don't think. So
Oh, really?
this is my first introduction to him, pretty much. Um, so he just stood there, and I'm like, okay, all right, I guess we're going to continue this conversation with me holding this suitcase on me. And he said, "Hey, I just want to invite you. We're going back to Vancouver. We got a few days break. If you want to come back to Vancouver with me on my Learjet." I'm like,
Wow.
uh, well, let me think about this. Yes.
Mhm.
Of course, I didn't have to think about it very long. But we were on tour with Anne Murray's old tour bus, and
Really?
there literally was ice forming on the inside of the windows. And so we were going to have to go from, I think it was Sault Ste. Marie to oh God, it's somewhere very, very far away. It would have been like an overnight
Like
drive. And I was
like
like, no,
back west?
I'm out of here, man. I'm out of here. If I'm getting on Bryan Adams' plane, I'm going. So we got in his white van, you know, the unmarked white van, so that fans wouldn't know where he's going. And we kind of huddled in that little van together, the whole band and his crew. and me, and there's Bryan Adams. I'm going, holy crap, is this really happening to me? You know,
Yeah.
we get on his plane, and I'm just like total rock star stuff, right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was really, really cool. He was very quiet, I think
Yeah.
he was trying to save his voice. I can totally understand where he's coming from. You can imagine being that big and having the fans constantly at you, and you just want a little bit of peace of quiet. So I kind of left him to himself, but we had a few little discussions here and there about stuff, so it's kind of neat.
It was a big time in his career that year. And I
Well, yeah,
mean, so it was
it
a
was
really good time for you to be on that tour.
well, it was his kind of return in a way
Hmm.
from being away for a few years. He
Hmm.
made it big. He made it big in the early to mid 80s, but this was like 1991, and he was coming up with the Waking Up the Neighbors album.
So this was
So
like his big international success for him.
yeah,
Like this is when everything
yeah.
like really blew up, I think. So
Well, the big song that everybody plays at the weddings, everything I do it for you, right?
exactly.
And that was a big deal because I remember my manager, Sam Feldman, at the time, is
Mm.
partners with Bruce Allen, who was Bryan Adams' manager. So I was one of the few people who got to see that video before it got released with the
Hmm.
porpoises or the dolphins jumping up out of the water.
Thought I died
And
and gone to heaven.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that was pretty cool back in those days to have that like on screen. Apparently there was some digital animation of some kind. I don't know exactly how they did it, but it was pretty groundbreaking
Yeah.
for a video. Yeah.
The
So
record company
anyways,
was going all out.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
going,
And
yeah.
I remember Bruce Allen saw me at Maple Leaf Gardens, and he came up to me and he said, he was really gruff, right? Yeah, everyone knows that Bruce Allen has got a certain kind of personality, right? And
Yes.
he said, "You're not standing out on the stage. You should be wearing red." And I went, "Oh, okay." So my, I think
Wow.
my stylist and we went down to the Eaton Center in Toronto or wherever the hell we were. I can't remember. And we went to some mall, and I went to Le Chateau, and I
Yes.
Le Chateau is
Classic.
where it's where all the girls got their club dresses, right? So I went and I
Hmm.
found this red kind of taut that was already kind of cool, and I wore that the next night. Anyway, so that was my advice from Bruce Allen.
Sounds like I can hear it when you say it coming out of his mouth. Like
Yeah, well, he was really pretty instrumental in getting me signed, and because oh God, I'm trying to remember the story here, but we shot the album um before it was released, of course, but we did the whole album like except for Love Don't Last Forever and I think one other song.
Mhm.
So it was a finished album. And we weren't getting a lot of interest, but Bruce brought it to Joe Keener from Chrysalis Records in New York. He had the connection, and yeah, they signed us up after that. We did a big showcase in Vancouver at Coconuts, which is a club in
Oh.
Vancouver. You wouldn't know those days, though, Naomi. I was like 1990.
No.
90. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't yet, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
did.
was
I was 11.
okay. Enough said, enough
So
said.
I didn't know about coconuts yet.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the few clubs that was in Vancouver that was open on a Sunday. And the Sunday would be when all the bands would, come to the club and check out the other bands kind of thing. And
Wow.
we did our showcase there for Chrysalis Records. And I remember in the change room, I was there and Sam gave me a couple of tequila shots because, when you're on that precipice of stardom, and this is it, man. If you can't prove to the record company you've got what you need to do live, you're
Mhm.
done. So there was a lot riding on this performance. And I
Mm.
just got up there and I just kicked the biggest ass I could possibly kick. And
Awesome.
we were super loud. And I think that the neighbors started complaining, and our manager had to go out there and pay off some people or something. I don't know. I've heard sort of scattered stories about that, and I don't know if they're really true or not, but yeah. Yeah, it was pretty amazing, you know.
Just
And
to
that was
avoid
with
the
Brian,
trouble.
that was with Brian McLeod in the band at the time, because he didn't know yet, I don't think, that he had cancer. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think you like it a lot. I think you like what you see. I know you like what you got, baby. 'Cause what you got is me. I wanna step into the water. I get totally wet. I'm a Romeo's daughter. I'm made up to my neck. This heart, these hands are made to understand. This girl and that man, if we don't make it, no one can. Oh, baby, I cry myself to sleep at night. I'm so in love. I cry myself to sleep at night. I'm all together. I cry myself to sleep at night. This woman is in
I was going to ask you too about singing, your actual use of your voice, and
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
now you mentioned something about muscle tension dysphonia.
Yes, yes.
Tell me about your experience with that.
Well, it's just such a weird thing. I don't know what caused it. I didn't have it back then.
Mm.
I didn't have it at all. I think it's an age-related thing to
Mm.
some extent. But I did a bit of research around what muscle tension dysphonia, and it's just the definition of it is just tension around the vocal cords that prevents the vocal cords from closing properly when you're phonating, when you're trying to sing.
Mhm.
Um, but the causes could be a lot of different things. It could be an operation that you've had. It can be psychological trauma, just
Mhm.
something physical. I think it's a combination of all those things, and age. So I actually have come to the conclusion that it's just you need to sing more as a mature singer than you would normally.
Yeah.
You need to warm up more, and you need to sing more. So, back in the day, I would be singing 6 nights a week. And so
Mhm.
you don't have to really practice. But these older singers, I don't know if you notice, some of them, their vibrato starts getting really warbly and wide. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just the aging of the vocal cords. And I think that you just have to really, really think of practicing at least 8 hours a week. That's what I do.
Mhm.
Um, and it's really hard because you can't be with a band eight all the time. You're going to have to practice at home and keep the voice in shape. I
Yeah.
think because we're not singing clubs full time anymore, you have to work more at home. And so what I did was I just kicked it up a notch, and I just started singing a lot more rather than just relying on my voice to be there all the time. Um,
Mhm.
so it's really gotten way better. I'm like singing no problem now. It's just fantastic. So,
That's so
um,
good.
the Chrissy Steele stuff is still a little bit of a challenge. But you know, if I take it down a notch, I could still pull the stuff off. So
You
thank
have a
God for that.
phenomenal voice and range. Um,
Well, thank you.
those songs on Magnet to Steel are not easy vocally. You
No,
know?
I challenge anyone to try them.
Mm.
But you know, Darby Mills also had incredible range too, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember when I first heard Turn It Loud on Fox in Vancouver, turn it loud, you know, like that first note, it was just like, what the hell is this? You know?
Mind
Yeah,
blowing.
so there's a few singers that can pull that stuff off, but you know, definitely my favorite singers are um the you know Darby Mills and Lee Aaron and
Mm.
believe it or not Celine Dion. Celine
Mm-hmm.
Dion, she's my favorite. Alana Miles that we mentioned, and of course I think number one, numero uno is gotta be Ann Wilson. Ann Wilson,
Yes.
she's the woman who kind of really broke a lot of ground in the 70s. And what did we have back in the 70s for hard rock singers, really, or even rock singers was Janis Joplin.
And
Um,
like Fleetwood Mac.
you know, that wasn't really hard rock and kind of stuff,
No,
right? Um,
no.
so she really was the person that I learned from initially. And then, of course, Pat Benatar, right?
Yeah.
You know, so
These are the ladies who are breaking it open for female rock vocalists. And I never really thought
yeah,
about it going back to that place, but you're right.
you know, like I remember driving in my car. My dad lived in Comox and my mom lived in Victoria, and I had a little red Volkswagen Beetle, and I used to have one of those ghetto blasters that you'd have to put a whole bunch of double D batteries in.
Mm-hmm.
That was my
Yep.
way of listening to music, and I would sing an you know 3 hour drive there and 3 hour drive back to all Pat Benatar and Heart stuff, and that's how I learned really, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a parallel because we didn't have a cassette deck in the car either. So I had that ghetto thing going on too.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I didn't have a cassette deck. I couldn't afford one. I don't know. All these people had these expensive stereo systems in their car. I could never afford
Yeah.
that. So,
No.
but yeah, it was great, you know. And oh, of course, I have to mention Holly Woods from Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, she's got such a fantastic voice. And she actually ended up doing an album with Brian McLeod.
Yeah.
Assault, Assault and Flattery, it's called. It was a solo album after she left Toronto. You got to check it out. She
Okay.
does it. She does a duo with Darby Mills called Cat something. I can't. Oh God, I can't remember. Oh, anyways, she's retired now. Holly Annie Woods is really her name, but
Yeah.
she's on my friends on Facebook, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe she's friends with me on Facebook. She's such an incredible writer, you know.
Yeah. And she's a very big name in the history of Canadian rock music, you know?
Hmm. But she's an American, which is really interesting too.
I
She,
always thought, yeah, exactly. I always thought that was the case that she was Canadian.
I don't
Anyway.
know, I don't quite know the whole story how she ended up in Canada, but she became
Mm,
like a Canadian artist, despite the fact she was you know, living in the States. But I think she moved back there now. Um,
yeah.
she's been going through a lot of health problems in the last little while, so I'm
Yeah.
hoping the best. Yeah.
There's a lady from Edmonton named Michelle Truman who's doing the vocals now, I believe, for
Yes,
Toronto
they've
Live.
got replacements for everybody now, I think. I mean,
Mhm.
the headpins are onto their, well, let's see, who was the first oh, I knew I was going to forget names. There was
It's okay.
there was a headpin singer before Darby, and then there was Darby, and then there was me. I replaced Darby for a little while, and then it got changed. It's kind of
Yeah.
long story, but we played on the road with Brian because Darby and him sort of parted ways, let's just say.
Mm.
Darby's got a lot of information on her YouTube, I think, and everything about the story about that. I don't really know the story, honestly.
Hmm.
but I just know that they parted ways, and so he wanted to continue with the Headpins name, but my label at the time didn't want to call it the Headpins because who the hell was the Headpins? I had an American label, and it was kind of shocking. It was a real reality check when I was down there in the States that they really don't know anything about us in Canada. They couldn't care less.
Exactly.
It's kind of funny. But what was I saying again? I've lost my train.
We're
Oh
talking about
no.
Darby with the headpins experience.
Yeah,
And
they
then
didn't they really didn't like the name, and anyways it wasn't going to help them, and they wanted it to call they were going to call it Steele McLeod at some point.
yeah.
There's an industry magazine that actually had mentions that. I have it in my basement somewhere.
Yeah.
But so there was a few names that were bandied about, but we ended up with the Chrissy Steele name because Brian started getting sick.
Yeah.
So we decided to go with my name, you know, which was really hard because I always had the intention of working with Brian and doing all, having him be the leader and sort of lead the way and teach me and, um, how to do the interviews and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden I was kind of left to do it all on my own. And that wasn't that wasn't the plan, but
Yeah.
it ended up being the plan. So,
So the
but
intention was
yeah.
always more of you, in your eyes, it was more of a band than a solo
Oh
project.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it was only me and Brian that were signed to the label,
Yeah.
right? So, and Tim Feehan was one of the main songwriters. He did most of the lyrics for
Yeah.
the Maggot to Steel album. And he was quite famous in Edmonton, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, he did he had a lot of fame and fortune when it came to the Top Gun soundtrack. He got a song on there, I think. And he just moved down to LA and he just started writing down there. So Brian and him would sort of write remotely together. Um, but yeah, it was really like I was on the road with Brian when we found out about him being sick.
Mm.
And he was just complaining about back pain, and he went to the chiropractor, he tried massage, and it was just really bothering him. And we were playing at the Beverly Crest in Edmonton. I
Yeah.
don't remember that club. Pretty sure it was Beverly Crest, and I just remember waking up after playing. I think we played already there. And we woke up in the morning, and our stage manager came to my door and he said, I've got some news for you. Brian's gone back to Vancouver. He's on a plane right now. He's going back and he's getting an operation. I guess they took him to emergency in the middle of the night and did an X-ray, and they found that he had a tumor in his chest. So that was the end of that tour, and my whole world and his whole world just got completely turned upside down. Um,
I can't even
so
imagine.
yeah, it was really, really a tough time for everybody, mostly Brian, of course. And we were really close. He was a good friend of mine, and it was a tough thing to deal with for sure. And he just had so many fans.
Hmm.
Like he's just got so many people that still think about him and loved his good. Like you ask anybody, any Canadian guitar player, and they'll always mention Brian McLeod was just their idol, their icon.
He had a
Um,
huge legacy.
he
Yeah.
really did. And, you know, I was just completely numb for a good few months. And he actually, he came back after his operation, and he was having chemo. And believe it or not, we did the Love You Till It Hurts video after his treatments and after his operation. I mean, that is the hardest thing I can even imagine to do, um,
Mm.
is to go through that. And we thought, you know, the thing about Brian, he was such a positive guy. And he had us all believing he was going to make it, even to the very, very end, you know,
Mm.
even to the very end, he had us all believing he was going to make it. So I believed him. I thought, oh, you know, he's probably going to make it, you know, and you really have, you hope for the best, you know. But I don't know the name of the cancer he had, but it definitely it was a bad one. So
Mm.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
really
mean,
tough. Sorry to interrupt, but I was just looking back and I just put a post on my Facebook about the Juno Awards and I looked at the date of the Juno Awards. I was nominated, and Brian, you know, we were nominated for Hard Rock Album of the Year. And it was like a month before he died. And, you know, I just kind of think, wow, I just was numb through the whole thing. I think I remember somebody tried to interview me and, hey, how are you feeling about having you know, being nominated for most promising vocalist in Hard Rock Album of the Year? And it was just really hard for me to put on a happy face back then, you know, because I kind of knew that, you know, the story was not going to be a good story. And
mm,
so it was really hard for me to promote the album. But you kind of have to compartmentalize a little bit, right? Because you have to push on.
right.
So,
So it's not easy, and it's not easy to take those moments and absorb them and take them in the same way when you're going through that kind of
yeah,
painful time.
yeah, it was very bittersweet, you know?
Mm.
So, yeah, yeah,
I'm
good
glad
old
we could
Brian.
take the opportunity to remember him and his legacy and
Yeah.
how much he meant to you and your career.
Mhm.
Wonderful, wonderful man.
I kind of kicked myself though, because, you know, there were so many things I should have asked him, you
Mm.
know? Like he was just such a wealth of knowledge and he recorded, like, literally recorded all the instruments on that album. He did all the keyboards, he did a lot of the backing vocals, he did guitar, bass, drums, everything. um
Wow.
he was just so talented and you know, just such a great loss. But you know, I had to forge on, and when the album was done and everything, we got a, you know, while Brian was in the hospital, I got on a tour with Jethro Tull, of all people.
Wow.
Jethro Tull was touring, doing their whole American tour. And it was such an odd match,
Yeah.
because they were kind of a prog rock band that had a following that was probably 20 years older than me at the time. So, you know, but we were on the same label, Chrysalis Records in the States, right? So,
Ah,
and in fact, Jethro Tull was one of the very first signed acts to Chrysalis Records in the 60s, late 60s, I believe.
so it's like they're this huge band with a big fan base, but just odd to play to their audience.
Yeah, well, I remember my first gig. I looked out into the audience and everybody had gray hair.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? It was a
Even in the
real tough.
90s, eh? Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I got to play Madison Square Gardens. I got to play the Paramount and all the Fox theaters and the Detroit and Atlanta, you know, Cleveland. No, I think I got to say hello, Cleveland. I mean, hello, Cleveland. I mean, what
That's
rock
cool.
star doesn't want to ever say that,
It's
you
cool
know?
that you got to see all those venues though
Oh, I
from the
know.
inside, you know?
Yeah. Hmm. And I
Yeah.
think our last gig was at the Orpheum Theater in Vancouver. They played one date in Canada. That was it. And that was and I think, no, actually the very, very last one was in San Francisco. And I remember after I just was about to finish my last song, Ian Anderson came up on stage and he gave me this massive bouquet of flowers. And I was just like, God, pinch me. This is Ian Anderson, you know,
Mm.
giving me flowers. and I just opened up for him. I mean, it's just incredible, right?
Yeah.
Lots of opportunities for me back then, for
Oh
sure.
man, the amount of things you can reflect on and say that happened to me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really no trouble at all, at all, at all, at all that I have to say, that I give it all away. It's really no worry, the path I walk alone, and I wonder, oh, am I the same, and I wonder, heaven's just a game. Life is some mistake. Don't look at me, I'm strange. I'm lonesome and insidious. On the path I tread, murder in my head. I followed, never let. God isn't neither lion but the thread. After these messages, we'll be right back.
Dope Nostalgia listeners, I love you and I thank you so much for being a part of this show and its success over the last 2 years. We have what's called Patreon for those who want to support the show financially. For as little as $1 a month, you can become a subscriber and get bonus content, early podcast release, all kinds of cool behind-the-scenes stuff, and more. There's different tiers of membership starting at only $1 a month. And we even have some special merch for you guys who are in it for the long run. So please, join our Patreon. It's at www.patreon.com/dope nostalgia.
It's a conspiracy.
It's a Conspiracy is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network and happily powered by ATB.
We are a bi-weekly podcast that aims to discuss selected conspiracy theories, alternative accounts, legends, myths, and more without coloring the topic with our conversation, until the very end of the episode.
We also feature beer reviews, lame jokes, bad puns, far too many 80s movies references, geek culture, and general nerdery.
Our real aim is for fun, inclusive content that doesn't take itself too seriously.
You don't have to be blisteringly paranoid of mind control to enjoy a chin wag with your old pals, Greg, Charlie, Andrew, the Irish Madman, and our podcast puppies, Kylo and Ren.
It's a Conspiracy is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network powered by ATB.
You're Stonehenge. Pure genius. Thanks. Those Earthlings, they still haven't figured it out. Yeah, probably never will. I'll tell you something, though. Your pyramids, a classic. But the best, yeah. Sir, the best is how you get that soft flowing caramel into the caramel bar. Wait a minute, that wasn't me. I thought you did that. It wasn't me. If you didn't do it and I didn't do it, then who was it?
But we should probably talk about my current single that's coming out. I don't know if did I even touch on that yet? I'm not
We
sure.
haven't got there yet. I'm looking through the list here, trying to make things
Yeah,
in
I know
kind
there's
of,
so much.
a flow, but it's nice because we're having a good conversation that's automatically just flowing where it wants to go, which is nice.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's the
yes.
way we want it, right?
Exactly. But yes, we need to talk about the single coming up. Now, I always have trouble saying this word. Is it unrequited or unrequited?
Unrequited. I
Unrequited.
screwed it up though. It's my fault. I screwed it up. I called it unrequited. It's not it's unrequited.
Unrequited.
And I'm kind of going, okay, well, how the hell did we ever come up with that? And it's my videographer's fault. No, just kidding.
It's a great word. And
It's a great word. Is it? Well, David Latinga, he shot the Insidious video, and I can tell you a little bit about that. But
yes.
Unrequited, I said that the song is about unrequited love. And so when he sent me the first draft of it, I didn't really have a title for the song yet. And he just called it Unrequited. And I went, oh, that's a great name. Why didn't I think of that? So we ended up calling it that, but we added Remember Me to it because that's really the focus of the chorus. It kind of says that over and over again. So what really funny is that we shot the video. He said, I shot all those, well, you haven't seen it yet, but you will. But all the scenes in the video are shot with me sitting in front of an iPhone with a black panel behind me, sitting outside of my bathroom door, which had perfect light. And I did it all on my own. I just shot myself. And he called me up. He said, what I want you to do is I want you to wet your hair down, and I want you to look almost like you're underwater. So you're in the water. And so I had to keep on spraying my hair to make it look wet. And he said, I want your hair to be kind of all over your face, kind of like you're a mermaid in the water, almost like that. So that's what I did. And trust me, I will never show you the original videos because they don't look anything like what he did with them. When he sent me back the first draft of it, I was like, wow, do you ever know how to fix me and make me look good, David? You know? So
Wow.
yeah,
Videographer
he did a great
skills.
job.
Yeah.
He's gonna like that I'm talking about him too, I think. Hi, Dave.
So when is the release date?
It's actually January 20th. So it's
Which
a
is
Friday.
just around the corner.
January 20th, 2023, in case anyone's listening right now. You're probably wondering, what the heck is that about, that song?
What is it about? Yeah.
It's just basically, we've all had our hearts broken once. I mean, you haven't lived until you've had your heart broken once, right?
Yep.
And, in high school or whatever. And it's just that feeling of when you're in love with somebody and they don't have the same feelings towards you. And, there's in that person, I guess what the fact is, you can love someone, but there's no guarantee that they'll be able to return that love. So that's basically what the song is about. Pretty basic message, but we've all been there and we all can relate to it, I think.
I think it is one of those standard things that you go through as part of the human experience, is
Very
loving someone
dramatic.
who doesn't love you back.
Very, very, very dramatic.
You can't control who you love, really.
That's right.
So yeah.
And I've been there a few times. So there's definitely some layers in the song for me.
Good. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
You look terrified. You're searching for the door. You slip through any crack in the floor. I feel paralyzed. My feet are made of stone. Can't see no reason for going on. So remember me as a rolling sea. While your head was sinking below.
No, I'm just going to say that being an indie artist has been really cool, but it's been also a hell of a lot of work.
The marketing of the
I'm doing all the marketing and the promotion myself. And that's my fault because I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't really want other people doing it for me because I want my message to come across the way I want it to come across, and I don't want to have to manage somebody else. If I do it myself, I know it's going to get done right. And I'm a graphic designer and I can video edit myself and I do all that stuff myself. So I think I've got the tools to be able to do it.
Yeah.
but it's still frustrating because it's never ending. I mean, there's so much work to do. And just if there's any musicians listening out there right now and are thinking of releasing their own music, I followed, he's like a marketing guru guy from the UK called Damien Keys. It's spelled
Okay.
Keyes. And he's got like you can join up with him for $25 a month. And no, I don't get any money from mentioning his name, just so you know. But no, I just really can't say enough about how much it's helped me to have somebody go through a strategic plan of, what do you start with and what do you do, and step-by-step process. So it helped me immensely because I've never done this before, right? Never.
Yeah.
It's all new to me. I've got the design skills, but I didn't have the marketing skills to be able to market my own stuff. So yeah, check them out if you get a chance.
That's very beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That
But
just seeing
yeah,
your social media, I can tell like you're doing a great job with it because it is quite eye-catching, and I think it really, and you build up a lot of anticipation.
Oh, do I? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
how it comes across. It's good.
Yeah. Well, I just really want to keep people entertained and give them something to look at other than just an ad, because
Yeah.
I know when someone's scrolling through their iPhone, um, they just keep on seeing the same crap, right? And you got to catch their attention and you got to engage. And
Engage is the
you know,
word.
I just think that also I'm really lucky because I've already got an audience. If somebody's starting from scratch, it's really, really hard. And I really feel for those people because I am very blessed because I'm not starting from stage one. I've already got an audience out there, but I also really, really want to take care of the fans I have and not um, worry so much about finding new fans, because if you can take care of the fans you have, they're going to tell somebody and so on and so on and share and all that kind of stuff, right?
It
So got
absolutely.
to
Yep.
take care of what you got,
Right.
first. But obviously, being a singer, I want it to get out to as many people as possible too at the same time. But it's very expensive, as an indie
Yeah.
artist, like I probably spent a few $1,000s just on the 2 songs, just in Facebook ads and videos and promoting. And, there's a market out there that is making a lot of money off of these little indie musicians. And what are they getting back for it? There's really not a lot of money in it, unless you sell millions or get millions of streams. And Glenn Willows is lucky because he makes a living still off of Glenn Willows from Harlequin. He makes a living off of his songs that were written years ago. But the current industry, the way it is right now, it's like everyone is um, so many people putting music out on Spotify. How do you get noticed?
Yeah.
It's a toughie. It's a
The
toughie.
big sea now of, and how do you stand out in that sea if everyone can record at home and put it out
Yeah,
on the platform? Exactly.
yeah.
I think that's why
Um,
the word engage was very important, because I think it sets you apart when you engage with the fans more directly,
yeah,
you
I mean,
know, than
I can only do so much.
exactly.
But you hope that Spotify will like the algorithm and have it in your favor.
And,
Um,
and get on
but
those playlists that they
and get
have.
on those. Oh, it's so hard to get on those playlists. And by the way, and this is an industry sort of thing, is that a lot of these playlists are bought up by the record labels, and there's no hope of somebody unsigned getting on those playlists. No hope whatsoever.
Wow.
So unless you somehow magically take off, then a label will notice, oh, look at this person. They've got millions of followers. They're gradually growing bigger and bigger, bigger, and then they'll come in and they'll try and sign you right off the bat there. But you gotta get your own following first before the labels will get interested in you. It's like they don't want to do the work anymore, right? And so it's kind of sad, but that's just the reality of the music business now, you know.
But it is, I guess, refreshing, like you said, to have that control. You have the control now.
Yes. Well, I don't have to answer to anybody but myself, right?
Yeah,
I like it that way. I kind of do.
100%.
What is the catch-22 too, right? I've only got 2 songs out so far. I don't have a whole album. But once I get enough songs together, I know there's been fans of mine that have been asking for a CD and stuff like that. So
Maybe like a
hopefully,
vinyl.
yeah, put an EP out or something, maybe even with 4 or 5 songs, and then they would be able to have something physical. But it's just kind of silly to, what am I going to do? Release, 2 songs on a CD? That's not
Yeah.
really marketable. That's not really marketable, right? So
It's such a singles-driven world now, too. So
absolutely, yeah,
it just makes sense to do things that way.
yeah.
Got a bad reputation. Got a bad attitude. Say nobody's gonna take it down. Well, I got news for you. You like to hear the hearts are breaking. You like to break them in two. Gonna take what you've been given now. Gonna hand it right back to you. You ain't never seen the likes of me, yeah. Yeah, I can give it. There ain't no limit. Come on and get it from me. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to get away. You feel the sting of my arrow, baby. You get the treatment. You get the works. I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna love you till it hurts.
Remember Sue Medley?
Yes.
You do?
Yes. I remember.
Well, I just put down some notes here, some interesting facts. It's like Sue Medley and we kind of grew up together in Comox. She's from Comox.
Really?
And we sang in the same choir.
That's cool. Okay, what kind of choir was it?
Oh, it's a high school choir.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like we did a lot of we did the Hallelujah chorus and Bach and all that sort of stuff. But some of it was modern music, but a lot of it was classical.
Mm,
And so she was an alto, and I was the soprano. And
nice.
I just thought that was an interesting little fact. And I think she came to the Junos the same year that I was in '92. I can't remember if did she win a Juno? I can't remember.
I think so, but I can't remember what year it would
Yeah,
have been. But I feel
it's
like I
kind of
have a vague
interesting.
mental image of that. Yeah.
What are the chances of that, right? In the same high
Right.
school, in the same, choir. Like, what are the chances?
Did you stay in touch at all?
No, we weren't really close, to be
Yeah.
honest. She had her kind of, bunch of people she hung out with, and I had my bunch, and we never really came together. But I just,
Mhm.
thought it was kind of interesting.
That's very cool, actually.
I know she rode horses, and I rode horses,
Hmm.
so sometimes we would meet each other on the trail. Yeah.
Tell me
And
about
by the way, I was born in Calgary too, by the way.
you're
Just,
an Albertan.
yeah, I
Oh,
am an original Albertan.
nice. So
Yeah.
you grew up, how long were you in Calgary before you moved out to the island?
Oh, I was just like really young. I
Yeah.
don't even know if was I walking yet? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I do have some very vague memories of Calgary. I think we lived in Mayland Heights. Do you know where Mayland Heights is?
I'm not very familiar with the areas in Calgary.
Yeah, yeah. But my grandma lived in Edmonton, and my mom and my dad lived in Mayland Heights. So we moved to Courtney, when I was, or Comox as it was called, when I was super young. So I don't really remember too much about it. But I went back and I played lots of clubs there.
Yeah.
Like I played at the Rex, the Rex in Edmonton.
In Edmonton, it was called the Rex.
Yeah,
Oh.
the Highwayman. The Highwayman was another gig there. There
Ah,
was this. We're talking like 1985, right? So
okay.
you probably never experienced those clubs.
No, no, but I bet a lot of our listeners have, and I bet I know a lot of people who were involved in that time.
Well, I was in a band
those
called
kind of scene.
Reform School at the time.
Oh, nice. I like that
Yeah,
name.
yeah. We had a 45-foot long bus that was painted black and it had red lips on the back of it. And so whenever we came into town, we were going through some little small town in Alberta, the cops would always stop us. And they'd
What's going
ID,
on here?
please. They would always have to get us to pull out our ID. We looked like a bunch of criminals, you know.
Those rock stars,
Yeah.
up to no good.
And then there was also the Beacon in Calgary. That was, we used to say peeking at the Beacon. And then there was North and South. Oh God. It's so long ago. I don't even remember some of the clubs, but I have some old advertisements that I cut out from papers, and maybe I'll post them on my Facebook one day.
Oh, that'd be cool. I love that retro stuff.
Yeah.
No, I've said to friends before that I wish that I had been about 10 years older, just a decade sooner, so that I could have experienced when live music was original bands coming through the towns, and you could, go see live music and the places would be packed, and people appreciated seeing new bands and listening to new artists live.
Yeah,
Because that's not the kind of world we live
incredible.
in anymore. I wish I had been a part of that.
It was an incredible time, but cover bands were pretty much ruling the clubs, and it needed a change. It needed a change because I played in a cover band. That was my way to get used to singing in a band, was to play in a cover band. And it was a great place to learn how to move on stage and do all that, beginners kind of learning how to be a performer. But you have to be able to write. And I think a lot of bands didn't go anywhere because they didn't write their own material. And it really needed to change. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of those bands, they kind of fell by the wayside after grunge came along because their job was taken away because clubs closed down, and it was all just kind of original music mostly after that. Unless you turned into a wedding band or something.
Yeah, but I felt like these clubs were not, at least now in the last 10, 20 years, they don't pay original artists enough.
No, it's basically the same as it was 30 years ago. And people always complain about this. It's like, I'm doing a gig, I'm still getting paid $100.
You'd hope.
Unless you're a big act and you can really make it a business and do a big tour, it's still expensive to tour. And
especially this country, because
I mean, there's
takes
gas
forever to get somewhere.
Yeah. But it was a great learning ground for me to start in a cover band, but it was time to move on to something else. And thank God I did,
Something that's more satisfying for you creatively.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like talking about the early years. I'm glad we went there.
Yeah. And another funny thing was that when I first went on the road, I was a little bit shocked because in Alberta they called them cabarets, and so basically during the day there would be exotic dancers, and then at night there would be the bands, and we all stayed in the same hotel. So you can imagine.
Wow.
It was just like, it was like paradise for the guys, but it sucked for me.
No kidding.
And I had
Oh.
to, I kind of, I ended up befriending some of these were the only women that I could talk to on the road because I was just hanging out with 7 guys,
Yeah.
being forced to listen to music that I hated. And on the bus, whenever we were driving around, it's like, oh no, I don't want to hear that Iron Maiden freaking album ever again.
Overkill.
So, but they were the only women in my sphere, and I ended up being good friends with them, and they were really cool and everything. But it was just kind of funny. Yeah.
What was your taste? What were you wanting to listen to? What was your taste in music?
Oh, just like who I was talking about before, like Pat Benatar, and sort of probably a little more commercial stuff than the guys were into. But I do remember when I first saw a Poison album, the album cover with the one where they look totally like women.
Mhm.
That was
All
really
right.
shocking. That for those days, that was completely shocking. Like Motley Crue had sort of come out, but Poison took it to a different level, right?
And then it was commonplace for them
Yeah.
guys to all be wearing
Yeah.
makeup. Very
And
commonplace.
I got to see, Judas Priest. Rob Halford is one of my favorite male vocalists, by the way, other than David Coverdale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got to see some pretty cool bands while we used to be able to take a night off maybe and go see somebody, in Alberta playing at the big, what's the big place in Edmonton again?
It was the Coliseum.
Yeah. So
Northlands.
we would have seen Judas Priest at the Coliseum probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Or
boy,
the
it sure
Saddle Dome in Calgary.
was, it sure was cold there in the winters though. It was really cold.
Mm. You have a fairly mild winter, don't you, out in the island?
Oh, it's super mild here.
Yeah.
Like it's probably like 10 degrees Celsius right here right now.
Is there grass on the ground?
Well, of course there is. Yeah, there's
It's
probably
not covered in snow.
there's sometimes there's still flowers in the winter. Sometimes I can't believe it.
You're so lucky.
But you have never really you haven't really experienced winter until you go to Winnipeg in the winter.
Oh, brutal,
Yeah.
right?
Edmonton's pretty cold too, though. So
Yeah, it's a dry cold here in
it's
Edmonton.
it's a dry cold, yes. And I always had my humidifier going, and eventually when I was touring and we had a tour bus, the roadies would put a humidifier with a hose inside of my how you've been on a tour bus, right? And they have these little curtains that you lie. It's like you're living in a coffin. You're sleeping in a coffin almost. And so I had a hose that would go into my little coffin, and the humidifier would constantly be moisturizing the air for my vocal cords.
Nice.
In fact, Ian Anderson, of course, the guy from Jethro Tull, I remember I came back to my dressing room. We were playing at Madison Square Gardens, and I was having a little bit of vocal problems. And he drove around in a cab in New York to find a humidifier for me. What a nice guy! I got a little note. I got a little note on my storage stage door. Hey, was just making sure you got your humidifier. I heard you're having a little bit of vocal problems. I was like, oh, I still have that note.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I'm a fan now of Ian Anderson.
Yeah, Ian is super cool dude,
No
and
doubt.
an icon.
No doubt. That's a very handy thing to have. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we're covering that we don't miss any of the
Interesting
stuff
little
that
bits.
that you want to cover before. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm just, I'm hoping that people will go on to some of the streaming services and check out my new single on January 20th. You don't have to do it on January 20th, but it would be nice if everyone did it on January 20th, because then Spotify likes me and it'll start spreading it out to other people, possibly with the algorithm. Geez. I don't know what else to say. Oh yeah, well, one last thing. My very, very, very first band, I managed to get Jeff Mosley, who is a bass guitarist here in Victoria. He was in my very first band, and he's actually playing on Unrequited. So
Yeah.
I wanted to put a little plug in there for Jeff and thank him for doing that.
That's so cool that you still have that connection and
Yeah.
we're able to make that happen.
Yeah.
Very
So,
cool.
well, I think I've covered it all, man. I mean, can you think of anything else?
Of the two huge ballads,
Oh,
Love Don't Last Forever and Cry Myself to Sleep, which of the two was your personal favorite?
well, I think they're both great songs. And I do understand that we had to get Mutt Lange to approve us putting it on the Magnet to Steel album, and I thank him for that. Because he didn't have to do that, right? But I'm gonna have to go with Love Don't Last Forever because
love it.
because Brian and Tim wrote it, and it reminds me of Brian, and the lyrics just really, really are great lyrics. And it was written for me. And Cry Myself to Sleep, there's been a couple of other artists that released it before me. So this Love Don't Last Forever feels like a lot more like a song that I could consider mine. But I love singing them both.
Here you are. Tell me, how have you been since we've been apart? Guess you know I took it hard. It's not easy to live with a broken heart. Now you come back for more, thinking everything's like it was before, but it's over now. This ain't no wishing well, no sitting around in a cheap motel. It's over. It's over. Love don't last forever. Isn't that what you said when you turned and walked away? There's no such thing as heaven. It was all in my head. It's just a dream that fades away.
Oh, it's just such a solid song. Love Don't Last Forever. I was talking to a friend yesterday. He's like, he's like, they don't make good bridges anymore. And I said, and he goes, give me an example of a song that has an incredible bridge. And that's what I gave him.
Don't wanna cry no more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Except 2 octaves above what I'm just singing. It's a very, very hard, it's an incredibly hard song to sing live. I posted a live performance of me doing it with my band, who I should mention right now because they are awesome guys. So the Chrissy Steele band, after we got signed, was Joe Woke. Oh, and I have to remember, so Joey was in reform school. The band with the big, red lips on the back.
Yeah,
With the
reform
bus.
school, yes.
The bus that had the big anyways, it was reform school. And after Brian got sick, I think I suggested Joey because he was one of the top guitarists in Vancouver at the time. He was playing with a bunch of other bands. So sorry, why am I bringing this up again? I've got a mind. I've got a mind like a squirrel.
We were talking about making sure like we talk about the whole band.
Yeah. Okay. Well, after we got signed, it was Joey Woke and Rick Feddick, who's actually he's played with some big acts. What's the guy, Bad Company, the singer for Bad Company, Paul Rogers?
Yes.
He was playing with Paul Rogers after Chrissy Steele, like quite a few years after Chrissy Steele. And now he's playing with a tribute act called Barracuda, who does a heart tribute act.
Oh, wow.
He's got a great singer. So he's playing with them now, but he's been doing a lot of different things. And Jim Webster, he lives way up north now. He was the keyboardist, and Anton Vaught, he was our bass guitarist. So that was after Brian got sick, but before he got sick and before we got signed, obviously it was Brian McLeod, Matteo Cartazzolo on keys. He engineered the Magnet to Steel album with Brian, and he was also a keyboardist. And then Danny Latham was playing on bass. Unfortunately, he died a few years ago of cancer. So another person with cancer, it's just like, Jesus. Bernie Aubin, who's always been the Headpins drummer since day one, and he's still going at it. I don't know. I have to ask Bernie how old he is. I talk to him on a regular basis. He's a good friend of mine. So I think he ended up with Kim Mitchell when we were going on tour. I think he was actually playing with Kim Mitchell or something. I'm not sure who he was with at the time, but we couldn't take him with us. And we actually had Matt Frenette, the drummer from Loverboy, for a while.
That's cool.
We were going to tour with Matt Frenette from Loverboy and Peter Fredette from Kim Mitchell.
Yeah.
That's bass player that can sing like a bird. But we were using Loverboy's rehearsal space in North Vancouver, and that was the band there for, I don't know, a few weeks, I think. And then it ended up being a different band after that. I don't know why. I think they had to play with Kim Mitchell. They went off with Kim Mitchell and did their thing with them. So it's a long time ago, so memory kind of tends to fade. So, but oh my God, like that was so fun playing with those guys. There's actually a live YouTube video with Matt Frenette playing with us. The guy just kicks ass. He's such a great drummer.
I want to find that video. We can save it on our playlist.
Just
for the show.
Google either Headpins or Chrissy Steele 86th Street. It should come up. Yeah, it's the whole show's on there with Matt Frenette playing drums.
That's awesome.
Unfortunately, we didn't get anything with Bernie. Not a lot of people had video cameras back then, right? So
right.
Yeah. I'll see if I can find something. I might have something in the archive somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have stuff that you haven't had digitalized yet that you're like still have on tape?
Yeah, you're reminding me. There are a few interviews with Terry David Mulligan on Much Music. Oh, and I did a big huge festival with Spinal Tap in 1992. I think that was the very, very last gig with Spinal Tap. Have you seen that movie?
So long ago that
Yeah,
I
I know it came
remember
out
it that well, but yes.
Yeah. So it was basically done, sponsored by Molson Canadian, and they would do, Spinal Tap did 3 concerts, one back east, one I think in the middle of the country, and then they ended up at Vancouver at the end of the day, and it was all done within 24 hours. And there was like Colin James, Lee Aaron, just tons of great bands. Bare Naked Ladies, I think, played. Yeah, so it was the Vancouver part of it was with Colin James and Tragically Hip, who drank all our beer, by the way. We went backstage and they had drunk all of our beer. Couldn't believe it.
Thanks,
but yeah, exactly. Never forgive him for that. Not that I drink beer, but the guys were upset.
I bet. They look forward to that.
Yeah. So that was lots of fun. But that was the very last that was the last gig that we did.
What do you see for gigs in the future? What are you thinking? What are you thinking about gigs for the future? Is there anything lined up?
No, not yet. But Glenn and I are working on something. I don't want to say anything yet, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to well, it's got to sound good, and we're thinking of just doing an unplugged kind of version of some of the songs, and cool. Maybe do a cover or two. Like one of the covers I was thinking was a Bonnie Raitt song, and possibly an Alana Miles song or something, like just something that people really want to hear. I might actually put a vote. I might go, okay, well, hey, everybody, here's 5 songs. Which one do you want to hear the most? And maybe we'll put that together or something like that.
I like that.
But putting a band together is a real pain in the neck. And I don't really want to have to go through that right now. Especially being in Victoria, it's really hard there's no rehearsal space here. It's really hard to find somewhere that's got good equipment, and it's expensive. So we'll see how it goes, We'll just have to see how it goes. But I'm really, really would love I mean, people really do want to hear me. So yeah, I totally get it. I know.
We do.
Yeah.
Even if you can like make something for people on YouTube, just like as a taste of hearing the new songs and a couple old songs, and just
that's the plan. That's the plan, right? We're just got to get together, and we're gonna in the next couple of weeks we're gonna put something together, hopefully. So
good.
See how it goes.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, especially for being like I was a young rock singer.
I heard you're a singer. I didn't know that.
You're one of those ladies who inspired me as a vocalist. So I want to thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, very much.
Well, you're gonna have to let us know how to listen to your stuff if you have anything online.
I'll send you a link to some of the
Please do. I'd love to
songs
hear
that
you.
we did with the band. The band was called 6 String Loaded, and yeah.
Well, you've got a nice tone to your voice, just even speaking. I'm guessing you're like mezzo soprano, possibly.
Probably, yeah. I think if I were back in the choir days, I was definitely a soprano then, but I would be an alto now.
An alto. I know it's funny how the voice, the older you get, you lose about half an octave at least sometimes, right? I mean, my voice sounds way lower than it did when I was young, So
when I'm wrapping things up too, I was going to ask you, do you prefer having the rasp to your voice or the clarity, or is it more of like a combo?
I think it's a combo. I think depending on the note and the word that you're expressing, sometimes a little bit of rasp is good because it shows the emotion, it shows the anger or the underlying whatever it is that you're singing. It sort of expands on that. It's like your voice, it doesn't always have to be clean, and it doesn't always have to be raspy.
Yeah.
It's a tool that expresses what you're talking about.
Just add some color to it, some depth, having that rasp on there.
Yeah. I think it's a combo, definitely. But the raspiness is hard on the vocal cords, though. So
it is.
It
sounds so good.
I know, but you can only do that for so long as a singer. Your career is going to be really short if you're doing the raspy thing all the time. But mind you, there's some people that do it,
Yep.
But,
some can make it work, some can't. It's just everyone's humanly different.
There's a singer from Australia, a guy. I just wish I could remember his name. He's like an insane singer, and he just sang live so well. It's just, there's some singers you just go, drop the mic. I'm never gonna sound like that. Like Celine Dion. Oh my God.
They have quite the gift.
Beyonce. Oh my God.
I miss hearing Beyonce do songs where we could really hear her vocalize.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the newer stuff is more like almost spoken in parts, which is it's cool. Like I like the direction she's taking musically and all that. But I miss hearing her sing like she used to sing in like Destiny's Child.
Well, there's also, American Idol. There's some incredible singers that come out of there. What was the one that won the first one? What's her name again?
Kelly Clarkson.
Oh God, she's a great singer, man.
Isn't she?
Holy crap.
Yeah. She's very diverse too.
She is just so amazing. Her voice, like God, given to her from God, no doubt. But so there's her and Pink.
I love Pink.
Wow. Wow. And she can do it while she's on a trapeze, a rope, swinging around. I mean, hello.
I know.
And that's not pre-recorded. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not pre-recorded.
what kind of vocal lessons do you need to take to do that? What kind of breathing
it's-
exercises?
No, that's genetic. Some people, you can practice and practice and practice. You're never going to sound like some singers, you know.
Yeah.
You just got to be you,
Mhm.
and just keep your voice in shape and just keep at it. But you know, as soon as you start saying, "I want to sound like this person or that person," you know, that's a losing game.
Agreed. Own it. Just own who you
Just
are.
own who you are. You know,
Yeah.
make it work.
Oh, Chrissy, thank you. I hope you
Aw.
had as much fun as I did.
I did. This is
Good.
fantastic. I can't believe I actually pulled this off.
You did it. It was amazing. You did an awesome job. So I'm really
Thank
grateful
you.
that you did that with me today for the show. And I hope like going forward, all the best for you. And I'm going to
Thank
promote all
you.
the stuff you do. So if you got new music coming
Thank you.
out, whenever, I'll make sure that we put it on the show and talk about it and keep in touch
Okay.
with what you're doing.
You betcha. And I can't wait to put this on my Facebook page.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll
So,
see
yeah.
you soon. You're amazing, Naomi.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, take care. And I
Yeah.
hope you have
Stay
enjoy
in
the rest
touch,
of your day.
man.
I
Let's stay in
will.
touch. Send me your links. Your
Okay.
singing links. Okay.
I'll do it.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Follow us on Facebook at Dope Nostalgia, Instagram dope_nostalgia, or on Twitter at Nostalgia Dope.
This podcast is licensed by SOCAN because we believe that artists should be paid for their work.